Well, hello out there in YouTube land, and yes, we are at the prefaces of another NFL season. The 100th anniversary of the NFL starts this week. Regular season, of course. Thursday night, you got the Bears hosting the Packers, that old time rivalry, and then of course on Sunday, it all gets going for most of the other teams, including Philadelphia Eagles for the 2019-2020 campaign, and looking forward to it. And yes, that means it's another season of the fan, the Philadelphia Eagles, and it is now the sixth season, for those of you counting at home, of the season of the fan, my season of the fan series for the Eagles, my fandom for the Philadelphia Eagles. And you have been here, for those of you who have been here with me through the past 5 seasons, through the ups and downs, the highest of highs, of course, a few years ago doing that, winning Super Bowl 52. Obviously, some of those Chip Kelly years were not very fun. Did not end very well. And then, of course, last season, coming off a Super Bowl championship as defending champs, and of course, losing in the playoffs in New Orleans to end the season on a pass that went through sure-handed Alshon Jeffrey's hands. And, what can you do? Now, this offseason, of course, there was many moves. There was just whole lots of stuff that went on, as every offseason brings. You had players coming, you had players going, you had players coming back into the nest, as it were. Draft picks, of course, coming in. A lot of excitement. And of course, there was some news about some players that may have been linked to the Eagles, to come to the Eagles as a possibility. And of course, it didn't happen. Jadeveon Clowney, of course, gets traded to the Seahawks, another bird team, and not to the Eagles. And obviously, there's a lot of thoughts about that, pro or con. Did you want Jadeveon Clowney here? Did you not want him? He was on a last of a basically the 1 year prove it kind of deal. Then he gets that money, after the season. Is it worth it? He's another one of those guys that could be a bit of a malcontent in the locker room. Had one of those a year ago in Michael Bennett. They moved on from Michael Bennett. Now, I will say this. When you talk about the defensive end position for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I guess that's where we have to start this video, I feel it was a position that they could be a little stronger at. Now, obviously, Chris Long retires after the season, and he was one of those heart and soul type guys in a locker room on the team, helped the Eagles win Super Bowl 52. What a great guy, too, he was in the community, a great human being, not just football player. I would imagine they still have him on speed dial just in case. Look, he's a veteran. Obviously, he didn't want to go through the rigorous, that could be with a training camp, with preseason, with all sorts of stuff. Not that the veterans play that much in the preseason, but everything that comes with it. So sometimes, veteran, when they're up there in years, they just say, you know what, I'm just gonna retire, and regular season comes along, and hey, I want to play again. It could be, it might not be, who knows. Hey, look, he won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. It's the first time an Eagle won that award. Much, much deserved. Congratulations to him. I know he's done so much, within the community and elsewhere with what he does with his generosity, and obviously well-deserved. I do think it's kind of a shame that he did retire. Obviously, he was a good player, but an Eagle has never worn the Walter Payton trophy patch on the uniform. It would have been kind of cool to have an Eagle with that patch on the uniform, but it is what it is. The defensive end, position as a whole, though. I mean, obviously, they bring back Brandon Graham, BG, of course, one of the all-time most memorable strip sacks, maybe the most memorable strip sack in franchise history against that guy in New England. Where's number 12? Yeah, the GOAT, him. In Super Bowl 52, of course, picked up by Derek Barnett, another one of those defensive ends that we're going to rely heavily on this season, coming back from injury. And so those two played a key role in the victory there in Super Bowl 52. Brandon Graham was brought back this offseason. Derek Barnett coming off the injury. Hopefully both of them can produce. They also bring back Vinny Curry, another guy who was on the team in Super Bowl 52, left for a year, wanted to, spend some time in Tampa and then come back. So there are some question marks at defensive end, but what did Trader Howie do this offseason? Well, you're going to strengthen the interior of the line. Now, I will say this: I think them moving on from Michael Bennett. I wasn't a big fan of that because now I don't really know the guy from Adam, but from what you hear is he's a bit of a malcontent. He's not great in the locker room. He divides guys against one another. He wanted more money, all sorts of stuff. And the Eagles are in that position where they just, they're a very strong unit. They're a very cohesive unit. Obviously, what was evident some years ago with even though they had a bunch of injuries and a bunch of things that would have derailed a season by a lot of different teams if you didn't have that strong leadership in the locker room, they were still able to overcome it and win Super Bowl 52 against that just never stopping zombie of a team in New England. But I will say this: I do think that Michael Bennett produced on the field. Certainly when he in the second half of the season. Obviously, they had some injuries there on the defensive line, and he filled in and played really well when he was able to play more snaps in the game. And he was a force, and in the playoffs too. And you move on from him, and you bring back BG, Brandon Graham, you bring back Vinnie Curry, and you're really putting a lot of stock into these a bit older players. Now, not to say Michael Bennett was young, but at the same time, I think he did serve a purpose on the team. But again, I'm not, as well as any of the other Eagle bloggers here, or vloggers, I should say, here on YouTube, we're not in the locker room, so we don't know. Maybe there was just strong enough opposition from other players, maybe some of the other leaders on the team that didn't want Michael Bennett around. And that's why Michael Bennett's now with that zombie team in New England via trade. But the Eagles did go out. They made a trade, or actually in free agency, and picked up Malik Jackson, who was a really good defensive tackle, who helped the Broncos win a Super Bowl some years ago. He spent some time in Jacksonville and was pretty productive there. So, that's a good move. And that seems to be the philosophy of the front office of course, the Eagles, is to build from the inside out. Okay, so you go with the lines, and you go from there. And over the years, this is what they've done. They brought in guys like a Timmy Jernigan. They brought in Michael Bennett via trade last season. Now they bring in Malik Jackson. Of course, they have Fletcher Cox, who they drafted years ago. You bring back a Vinnie Curry. You draft a Derek Barnett. So basically, the idea here is your strength of this defense is going to be the defensive line, and you really can't argue with what they've done because they've had a lot of success in recent years with that. They also built the offensive line. The philosophy, again, is you win in the trenches. I know it's an old school saying, but that's the way football's been won for many years, and that's the way football is won today. You have to have a strong offensive and defensive line. Yeah, you have to have the quarterback too, and you have to have the players in the skill positions, but those players are going to do no good if the quarterback's on his back the whole game, or if your defensive front is not getting pressure on the opposing quarterback and stopping the run of the opposition. I mean, if you're going to give the opposing quarterback all the time in the world to make throws, more times than not, they're going to beat you. And look, the Patriots, for what it's worth in that Super Bowl 52, as we remember, Tom Brady had his best statistical Super Bowl in his history. But with that, what happened? The defense had to make one play, make one stop, and that's exactly what they did. The strip sack fumble on Tom Brady there late in the fourth quarter. That just all but sealed up the game. There was still some drama there at the end, but it all but sealed up a victory. And again, building from the trenches outward. So you build up a defensive line. Which linebacker play for this defense isn't as important because, again, the emphasis, the stress is on the front of that defensive line. But then the linebackers and, of course, the secondary. I mean, guys like Malcolm Jenkins, like, McLeod, the safeties, they finally got safeties on this team for all those years that they didn't, after B-Doc was traded away. He should never have been traded away. But, they finally addressed the safety position years ago, and it's really developed some big-time, wins for this franchise. And obviously the corner position has been better in recent years. Could be better, sure. But I think, last season included, some of the young guys stepped up after some of the veterans got hurt and were lost for the remainder of the season. And that means that this team has a lot of depth at that position. And that's a big thing, because as we saw last year, that's certainly something you have to have, because you're going to have injuries and you're going to have some inconsistent play. But having that deep roster at cornerback is important. And that's something that, again, you got to give Howie, and the Brain Trust, tip the hat for making it, for building that. Again, could it be better? Sure. But I think for the most part, it's better than it's been, for a number of years. And some of those guys might be called upon again this season. Obviously, to start the season, Jalen Mills starts the first 6 weeks on the PUP list. So he will not be playing for the first, over quarter of the season. So again, some of these young guys, and Ronald Darby does come back from injury, but some of these young guys are going to be kind of thrust into position again, to be those the starting corners and stoppers on this defense. So anyhow, this offseason consisted, of course, as I said, they brought back some players. I mentioned Vinny Curry, of course. Would be remiss if I didn't mention D-Jax, of course. Action Jackson back in the nest. Really happy about that, because over the years, and I know they won a Super Bowl. Okay, they won Super Bowl 52, but they did have Torrey Smith when they won. And Torrey Smith, he was a veteran, so was Deshaun Jackson, but he was a burner. He was one of those guys that you had to keep an eye on, on a defense. It keeps a defense honest, right? Well, they didn't quite have that last season, because Torrey Smith was let go. He went to Carolina last season, I believe, if I remember correct. And they didn't do much of anything to replace Torrey. Now they did get Mike Wallace, but then he gets hurt early in the season, and they really didn't do anything to replace Mike Wallace. Torrey Smith basically never had a burner on the other side of Alshon Jeffrey the whole season. And you saw at times that hurt. Obviously the the offense became kind of predictable. There really wasn't a guy you had to worry that was going to beat you off the blocks. It's a whole different world when you have one of those receivers and when you don't. And we remember D-Jax from those years ago. Giants fans remember him too. From those years ago. And what a weapon he was. And certainly he's been a weapon against the Eagles for many years, from his time with the Redskins and last season when he burned the Eagles with Tampa Bay. So it's great to have him back. Is he the same Deshaun Jackson as he was when he left with stupid Chip Kelly just releasing him years ago? No. He's older, but he still has that speed. He still has that burn ability. He still is a receiver that you have to keep track of as a defense on the field. Where is he? Because he can beat you. And we saw that last season, early in the season with the Bucs. Now, before he got hurt, and he was having a pretty good year before he got hurt last season with Fitzmagic throwing him the ball. It was another game later in the season when famous Jameis was throwing him the ball. It was a little different. Now, I believe in Carson Wentz, and I believe he has a strong arm. Now, will it take a little time for those two to be on the same exact page? It might. But at the same time, I'm real glad about that move. I think that was a great move by Howie and the Brain Trust. Now, he has to stay healthy. Because if he goes down, they don't really have another burner. They have some good receivers. They have some good young receivers on this team, like an Arcega-Whiteside, of course, rookie from Stanford, which was a really good pickup. Good red zone, receiver. Got big size and is, good in the red zone. I can't really profess to have watched a lot of Stanford games over the years, but all the film that you see of him, everything that you hear of him, he is very gifted in the red zone at making plays. And he's a playmaker, and I think we saw some of that in the preseason. He had a really good game. What was it, some game against, I believe, Baltimore? He was balling out pretty good there in the second half. And, again, it's another weapon. It's another tool in the chest. Now, it's another year, of course, in with Dallas Goedert, who was picked up last season in the draft. Jumped over Dallas to get him in Dallas. That was great. But Of course, another year in for him in this offense. Obviously, Zach Ertz, who has the record now for tight ends for receptions in a regular season. I think that might be why Witten came out of retirement. I don't think he's going to have the record back at his advanced age. But at the same time, he's up there saying, "Yeah, this guy got my record." That and he sucked as an announcer. But anyhow, as we all know. But no, this offense, look, I just named a few players. Obviously, you talk about Alshon Jeffrey, you talk about Nelson Aguilar, you talk about the running game, of course, bringing in Jordan Howard. That was something the Eagles didn't have last season. They didn't have that hammer back. Now they do. All right, so you bring in Jordan Howard, you draft Miles Sanders out of Penn State, you bring back Darren Sproles, Corey Clement comes back off injury. There's weapons galore on this offense. Now, does it mean exactly that this team is going to light the world on fire offensively and score touchdowns on every possession? No. There's going to be times where there's lulls. There's going to be games where maybe they're not scoring at the pace that we would all like to see them. We are just coming off a baseball season where we got some offensive weapons, and it hasn't exactly, although festive is still, reminding that it's still baseball season. You got the Bryce Harper fanatic headband on. But no, sports is funny that way. You can have you can check off every box that you can, and you're still going to run into issues. And it just happens. There's a lot of human nature. There's a lot of human error that happens in these games, and we've seen Eagles teams in the past with tremendous offensive ability and couldn't really get it done in the end. I go back. We don't have to go back that far. I hate saying his name again, but Chip Kelly, when the Eagles had Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, Shady McCoy, Brent Selleck, lots of good players on that offense now, and Mike Vick, at quarterback. So they had a lot of weapons, and at the end of the day, couldn't win a playoff game. So the difference between that team and this, though, is that this team has been at the top of the mountain. They know what it takes to win. And there's enough players on this team that knows what it takes to get to that top of the mountain and win that Lombardi. So that's the difference. And the fact they're a little better coached now. Just a bit from those days, which is good. Dougie P's done a great job. The coaching staff has done a great job. Are they perfect? No. Are there things that still drive us nuts? Of course, when you look at Jim Schwartz's defenses and you see them on 3rd and long not being able to get off the field with that picket fence defense. Of course, there are going to be times that we're going to be pulling our hair out. And I don't have, a whole lot right now. I got the haircut. But, we're going to be pulling our hair out proverbially there and just... There are going to be times. It happens in every season. There's going to be times where we're doubting. There's going to be times where we're questioning. But at the same time, I think that this team, that this coaching staff, that the front office at least has proven that they will do what it takes to win. Now, obviously, last season it didn't end the way we were hoping. Now, last season, obviously, it was a bit of a miraculous run there at the end. Of course, the double doink and everything. But the game in New Orleans ended in a loss. The Eagles ended their season in New Orleans in the divisional round, after Alshon Jeffrey had a ball go through his hands. Now, is it rare? Is that something you're going to see all the time? No, he's a sure-handed receiver. But that just shows you how winning and loss, how close it is between winning and losing. You're either going to make the play or you're not going to make the play. And a couple of years ago, the Eagles made the plays. Last year, at the end of the season, they didn't make a play. I still say they should have let the 2-minute warning go. And look, the play was there to be made. To their credit, they ran a quick play. It was there, and if Alshon caught the ball, it would have been a big play. Maybe he even goes in the end zone. Who knows? But it goes through his hands, into the defender's hands, and that's it. The season ends in heartbreak. Again, thank God we won Super Bowl 52. Otherwise, it would have been another notch in the belt, season. But it just goes to show you, you can have everything right. You can do everything right. And at the same time, if you miss one play, that's going to be the difference. We saw games last season where that was the case. Those games that we won 2 years ago making plays. Last season, there were games we lost because we couldn't, and there were some crazy things that happened. I mean, they lose a 17-point fourth quarter lead at home against the Panthers. I'm not thinking that that's gonna happen all the time. In Dallas, you had one of the craziest bounces I've ever seen off the hands of Rasul Douglas go into the hands of Amari Cooper for the game-winning touchdown in overtime. Just craziness, just things that, it just goes to show, though, the fine line. That's 1 year, everything's going to go right, even with injuries. The next year, all those things that are going right go the opposite. But the good teams, they're the ones that overcome that. And the Eagles, to their credit last season, even though they were in a position where none of us thought they were even going to, have a shot at the playoffs, they found a way. They got in. They won a road playoff game in Chicago in a hostile environment, double doink. And then they played the Saints. I mean, certainly better than they played them in the regular season, but it just wasn't meant to be. It worked against them. I mean, look, they get off to a 14-point lead early, can't score again the rest of the game, and you can't do that. Now, I would hope that this team, if they're off to a 14-point lead, would still be able to score some points, and keep the pedal down. And that's something that, again, it's, you go back to that moment of Alshon Jeffrey, the ball going through the hands, but it didn't have to come down to that moment with the ball going through the hands. They could have built that lead a little more. And that's football. That's sports. I mean, there's always these what if we could have done this, they could have done that, and then it goes the other way, and the next thing you know, you're sitting at home watching two other teams play in the Super Bowl, or in the World Series, or in the NBA Finals, or the Stanley Cup Finals. It happens in sports all the time. Now, this series, and this obviously is about the Philadelphia Eagles, is about NFL football. I try to bring it down week to week for those of you who might be new to the channel, who might be just joining me here. And I welcome you to watch any of the other seasons of Season of the Fan, seasons 1 through 5, if you want to binge watch like Netflix. Feel free to do that too. I just try to break it down every week, as best I can for the Philadelphia Eagles going into games, talking about the game that just occurred. And look, we got 16 games to try to break down, week to week. Sometimes there's a lot of praise. Sometimes there's not a lot of praise, but, do the best I can. I've enjoyed doing this. Going into my 6th season of doing this now. I am a fan, like I said. I love my birds, and I look forward to this season. I have high hopes for this season. I think it's going to be a fun year. I'm real excited about the, what could be a great offense, perhaps even a historic offense in franchise history. I know that there are concerns. Obviously, the biggest concern, the biggest elephant in the room, if you will, would be the health of Carson Wentz. Now, obviously, we don't have the safety valve that we had in years past with Nick Foles as the backup to Carson. Well, they did go out and they got McCown. And for what it's worth, I know he was retired, and they brought him out of retirement. For what it's worth, he's a veteran, and he's a guy that's been in the league many years. Am I comparing him to Nick Foles? No, absolutely not. But at the same time, he's a veteran. He's seen every defense that you can throw at him. And I hope, and I feel, and look, I have a lunch bet on the line, okay? I lunch betted a fellow coworker that Carson Wentz is going to stay healthy all year. I mean, he was healthy. He played every game his rookie season, so it's not like he couldn't. He's always going to get hurt. It's not like it definitely is going to happen. I know he had some injuries in college and then the last 2 years. I mean, the injury against the Rams was such a fluky thing, though, that happened in L.A. those years ago. And last year, obviously, the back, and that is a bit worrisome. It is. But at the same time, I feel he has it in him to be healthy for a season. Get through a season. Weeks 1, finishing off in week 17 and getting into the playoffs and having success then. I mean, look, but there are concerns, obviously, and we don't have Nick Foles anymore. He's now with the Jaguars. So you bring in McCown because of injuries in the preseason, that wonderful preseason. And again, look, he's a veteran. I mean, does he have a lot of playoff wins under his belt, or has he done a lot in his career in the playoffs? Maybe not. But he is a veteran. He's seen a lot. He's seen every defense you can throw at him. So I do feel a little more comfortable with him as the backup than some young kid. even a guy like a Sudfeld, who really hasn't seen a lot of NFL defenses in his career. I mean, he's been here for a while, but at the same time, standing on the sidelines with a clipboard is a lot different than actually having you know, uh, game experience, in-game experience. And McCown's had many years of in-game experience with many different teams. So, you look, if the worst happens and Wentz does go down, and I hope not, I mean, look, my wallet hopes not. I got a lunch bet on the line for this. But if he does go down, I would still feel more comfortable with McCown than I would with a younger kid, you know, coming in there who's never seen an NFL defense in his life. You know, and I understand the reasons why Nick Foles was moved in the offseason, and I'm one of those who believes that it was the right move to make. I mean, look, he's earned the chance to start with a team, and if it's not going to be with the Eagles, and I don't think it should have been, because I do think Carson Wentz should be the starter here, if healthy, which he is. Nick Foles should be on another team starting. Is he going to have the success with the Jaguars he had here? Time will tell, but at the same time, he's earned the right to start in this league. And Carson Wentz is the quarterback here. He's the starter. I mean, the one thing I'll say about this fan base, and I'm not trying to criticize it because I'm a member of it, okay? But I think at times we can be kind of forgetful. It's like people forget what Carson Wentz did a few years ago before he got hurt with the Rams in that game against the Rams. I mean, he was the league MVP. I mean, he was the reason, partly the reason. The defense played well, certainly, that season, but Carson Wentz was one of the biggest reasons why this team had home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And without that home field advantage, I don't know if we're going to Super Bowl 52. I don't know, because it is, as we know, it's harder to win on the road than it is at home. And I know this team has failed over the years at home. It's well documented. But that year, a couple years ago, what did they do? They were 2-0 at home. They beat the Falcons, who were the defending NFC champions, and then they beat the Vikings, crushed the Vikings. And again, they were home. And part of the reason why they were home was because of the play of Carson Wentz until he got hurt in that fateful night in L.A. People forget how great he was. And I know last season, I mean, people thought, oh, well, his numbers were blah, blah, blah. He actually had a good year. I mean, it wasn't eye-popping. It wasn't the year he had a year ago, a year prior, rather. But he actually statistically had a pretty good year. You know, and I understand that people say, well, he's never had a game-winning drive, blah, blah, he's never done this, he's never done that. Need I remind people here that, all right, we talk about game-winning drives. And I get it. That's the thing that makes the starting quarterbacks, you put them in the upper pantheon because they had all these game-winning drives. I get that. But let's not forget, and I know, they blew the 17-point lead against the Panthers at home in that game. But let's not forget at Tennessee, okay? And I know it wasn't a touchdown, but in overtime, Carson Wentz and the Eagles offense had the ball first. He drove down the field. They got the field goal. That should have won the game. The defense comes on the field. The Titans convert a fourth and 15? Because I'm blanking on the guy's name all of a sudden. Because one of their corners forgot to turn around when the receiver ran by him. Okay? That's not Carson's fault. Okay, I know it's circumstance. It wasn't a game-winning drive. Oh, because the Titans got the ball. It's because of the rules. The Titans got the ball. Years ago, that would have won the game, that field goal. And let's not forget, in Dallas last season, okay, the Eagles twice on the road were down a touchdown against the Cowboys, and Carson Wentz drove them down the field and scored to tie the game twice. Now, was it winning the game? No. But he drove them down the field and scored touchdowns on 2 consecutive possessions to tie the game up at that time. And I will say until I'm blue in the face, or green in the face, for the Eagles, that if Carson Wentz got the ball in that overtime, the Eagles would have won the game. There is no doubt in my mind that he would have drove them down the field for the game-winning touchdown against Dallas in overtime. No doubt in my mind at all. It's not his fault he never got the ball. It's not his fault the defense couldn't get off the field and had Dallas go down the field, and that crazy bounce off of Rasul Douglas's hands that goes into Amari Cooper's hands for the game-winning touchdown. Not Carson's fault. And I know there are plenty of, you can come at me and say, well, what about this game? He didn't. What about that game? He didn't. Well, okay. Well, I just gave you 2 chances where he did or could have. So, to tell me that he can't do this, he can't do that, how long have we seen him? He's only been in the league for a few years. Give the kid a chance. For all we know, this season he can come up with some big game-winning drives. And let's not forget that the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl, they set up, what was it, the 61 or what was it, 61, 62-yard field goal by Elliott, right? Carson made a throw to Alshon Jeffrey on the sidelines to set him up to even try to make the kick late in the game. So, again, I get it. It's not he hasn't had the Elway drive. Okay, which, by the way, Elway didn't win a Super Bowl until they had a running game with TD years into his career, let's not forget. And Dan Marino had all those game-winning drives, and how many Super Bowls did Dan Marino come away with? I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there, okay? all due respect to Dan. But, again, I mean, look, give the kid a chance. Who's to say that this season he doesn't have 3 or 4 game-winning drives? Who's to say? I mean, for everyone that says he can't do it, well, let's see if he can. And I know there's been times where he hasn't come through, and that's certainly well documented. But I've seen him come through many a time. I mean, again, you go back to a few years ago, to the point where in the Super Bowl, if you remember the video, the NFL Films video of it, Doug Peterson shaking hands with good old Hoodie there to start the game, and Belichick is saying, I couldn't see a game on film where you guys were trailing. Well, who was starting most of those games that season? Yep, number 11. Okay? So let's just give the kid a chance. And I know we live in a city, and this is a fan base that has tons of passion. I mean, we wear the emotions on our sleeves, even when we're wearing short sleeves, okay? Or tank tops, okay? We wear our emotions on our sleeve. And sometimes we're hypercritical because we have the hyper passion. But sometimes because of that, we get a little blinded. And what I'm here to tell you is that Carson Wentz is a hell of a quarterback. I'm glad he's the quarterback of this team. Because I've seen many a quarterback come through here over the years who were drafted, who were absolute busts, who didn't do anything, who didn't even have half the season, half the career that Carson Wentz has had so far in his career. Okay? I've seen many quarterbacks come through here and have failed and have been absolute laughingstocks. Okay? And I know Nick Foles finished the job a few years ago, and thank God he did. Okay? Brought us our much-needed Super Bowl championship. And he'll always have a place at the table for that and for winning that championship. But Carson Wentz meant as much to that team to win that championship as anyone else. And given a chance, I believe Carson Wentz is going to be up there on that podium hoisting that Lombardi. Not just once. I think this guy has a chance to win multiple Lombardis, be multiple league MVPs, be multiple Super Bowl MVPs. I believe in his talent, and I believe in his makeup, and I believe in the fact that we have this organization that goes out and gets the guy some weapons, builds that offensive line, builds that defensive line to make the defense stout, to make this team to have a chance. To be one of the teams talked about every season for the next foreseeable future, to be one of those teams that's going to represent the NFC to win a Super Bowl. And that's a great thing. Because I certainly remember the years where it wasn't. So I'm going to give the kid a chance. And I'll always be thankful for Nick Foles, and I'll always be, thank him. I have his Super Bowl 52 jersey hanging in the closet there with all my other Eagle jerseys, including my Carson Wentz jerseys. So I will always be thankful for Nick Foles for what he did. And I'll always be thankful for Howie Roseman and the powers that be that brought him back that season so that once Wentz did get hurt, unfortunately for him, but Nick Foles was able to come in and finish the job. But saying that, I'm not saying I don't believe in Carson Wentz. I absolutely do. And I believe that he is going to ride off this season. I'm giving my prediction right now. This season, this 2019-2020 season, as a Super Bowl champion. I believe the Eagles will beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 54 in Miami. Beat our good buddy Big Red there in Miami, in Miami to capture Super Bowl 54. And I believe the game MVP will be number 11. Will be Carson Wentz. Yes, he's going to stay healthy. Yes, he's going to play the whole season. Yes, he's going to win in the playoffs because the Eagles will have home field advantage. They'll win the 2 games in the playoffs. They'll go to the Super Bowl 54, and we're going to have another banner to hoist after this season. That's just how I feel. I feel strong enough about this team. I feel strong enough about the coaching, about the leadership, about the talent on this team that's going to take them to win Super Bowl 54. Plus, they're hungry. It's been a couple years now. They want that trophy back. Okay? So I believe the Eagles are going to do it this season, and Carson Wentz is going to be a big reason why. This offense is going to flourish. They're going to score a ton of points. The defense is going to, make plays as we've been accustomed to seeing them do. And I believe that Dougie P, will get it done. The protege beating his mentor in Super Bowl 54 against Pat Mahomes. And my prediction is Pat Mahomes throws a late fourth quarter interception to Crevion LeBlanc. And I say Crevion LeBlanc because why not? It would be easy to say Malcolm Jenkins. Or another player. Crevion LeBlanc's going to have to get the put-away interception in Super Bowl 54, and the Eagles are going to walk out of Miami as champions and avenge the last time they were in Florida in the Super Bowl. It didn't go too well in Super Bowl 39, so we're just going to have to go to the Sunshine State and win this time. Not against the Patriots. We've already done that, so let's put another team in there. Hey, the Patriots can't get there every single year, okay? Every single they've been there like 3 in a row now. I think it's time for someone else. And this time D Ford isn't on the Chiefs to go offsides. Okay, so the Chiefs beat the Patriots in the AFC title game. Anyhow, that's how Mighty Fan sees it. That's how it's gonna be. So says Mighty Fan and Festive. And it's so festive. Yeah. So anyhow, I don't have a lot of bells and whistles in this video. The production value probably isn't very good. I don't have an opening or anything like that. I'm going to work on that, though, the next time I have a video here for the Season of the Fan, Season 6 of Season of the Fan, the Philadelphia Eagles. I will have an opening. But every week, because festive, is going to help people who like to gamble. Okay, I'm not a gambler. Okay, but for those who like to throw shekels, and make some bets here and there, festive is going to help. And every week, this is a new feature now on Season of the Fan, Philadelphia Eagles for Mighty Fan. Every week we're going to give you what's called the Festive Four. Okay, this is a 4-pack of picks, just winners. Okay, we're not doing any of the the point spreads and this and that, all that fancy smancy stuff. We're just giving you 4 winners every week. Festive is giving you 4 winners every week, straight up wins. And if you want to throw some shekels down on it, go ahead. If you don't, just enjoy the content. If you lose, you didn't hear it from us. Don't come try to find us, because no. It's not our fault you're throwing shekels around, but just in case you are, Festive is going to make sure to give you 4 winners every week. Again, just winners. No, the point spreads, the blah, blah, blah. No, we're not worried about that. We're just talking about winners. So we're calling it the Festive 4, and you're going to see this every week on the Season of the Fan series. So let's start with this week's Festive 4 for week 1 of the 100th NFL season, and here we are. We're going to start, okay, because festive's festive, okay? So we're going to start with the opening of the season, this Thursday night's game, the Bears and the Packers. And Festive likes the Bears, rawr, to beat the Packers in the first game of the season in Soldier Field. Of course, there will be no double doink this time because the Eagles aren't there. So we don't have to, and Cody Parkey isn't there. So we don't have to worry about any double doinks this time. So the Bears over Packers. The other winners this week, according to Festive, is Kansas City. Speaking of the team that's going to lose to the Eagles in Super Bowl 54, so we might as well give them a win now because it's week 1. So Kansas City over Jacksonville. The third team out of the Festive 4 is the team that I picked as the start of the suicide pool, or the knockout pool, whatever you want to call it. Of course, I do the WIP one every year, and I haven't done very good. I don't have any bling. But we're gonna go with the Los Angeles Chargers over the luckless Indianapolis Colts as the third pick. And Festive also is going to go with the Seattle Seahawks, who picked up Jadeveon Clowney, against the Cincinnati Bengals. So that is the Festive four for week 1. Again, to recap, we got the Chicago Bears over the Green Bay Packers, the Kansas City Chiefs over Jacksonville, Los Angeles Chargers over the Indianapolis Colts, and to round it out, we got Seattle over Cincinnati, over the Bengals. Even though the Bengals are orange and black. Festive's favorite team in Philadelphia, by the way, even though this is a season of the fan for the Eagles, and this is a very pro-Eagles series here, is the Philadelphia Flyers. Why? Because they start with F, and they're orange and black. Festive likes that type of thing. So, Festive is a big Flyers fan, and looks forward to seeing my buddy Mark M's season of the fan for the Philadelphia Flyers, the series that he does. Festive is a big Flyers fan, so I'm a big Flyers fan too. But Festive that's Festive's Philadelphia team. I love them all, but yeah, I got to go with the Birds as the number one. All right, everyone, well, that's going to do it. I did want to speak on the Jadeveon Clowney situation, and I'll bring that up in another week. I've already gone 40 minutes here. So let's bring that up in another episode, which there will be more. I may have one coming up this weekend as we get ready for Washington on Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, of course, on Fox. And we'll see. I hope to have a little preview vid for that. Of course, I will have a video after the game. May have some buddies here at the Man Cave watching that start to the season. So looking forward to that. And as always, let's go Birds! Another big season. I see big things in the Eagles' future this season. Super Bowl 54, Eagles over Chiefs. By the way, late fourth quarter interception by Crevion LeBlanc. I'm just saying it right now. I don't have a crystal ball or anything. I'm just throwing it out there. Carson Wentz, game MVP. Anyhow, that's going to do it for me. Hey, happy to have football back. Happy to have my Birds back. NFL season is ready to kick off Thursday night. I'm always excited for the season. Certainly excited for this one as well. It's going to be really, really, exciting to see these players and what they can do this season and how well this offense is going to do with a lot of tools in the shed. So, Carson, big year for you, buddy, okay? Stay healthy. I got a lunch bet going on this. And also the Eagles have to finish with a better record on the Steelers. I know, I just threw around a lot of lunch bets this season. I have another lunch bet with a fellow coworker who's a Steelers fan. Okay, one of those Yinzers, all right, one of them. That the Eagles will finish with a better record than the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. So I'm feeling good about things this season. I got 2 lunch bets going. So I got some shekels on the line. So anyhow, that's going to do it. Welcome back, football. Welcome back to this series, Season 6, Season of the Fan, Philadelphia Eagles. For Festive, this is Mighty Fan. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Go Birds! Have fun, everyone. Welcome back, football. See ya.